I'm excited to do this. Everybody's been asking for these. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Spence here at Core 4x4. Now this video is going to be the start of a small series. We'll do multiple videos over the next few weeks, announcing actually a few new products we're going to bring to the Dodge and Ram platform. Now the first product we're going to be announcing in this series is the video we're doing today, which is our new universal trailing arm kit for the rear end of these big trucks. Now the Dodge and the Ram trucks have always been a big part of the Core 4x4 family and product line, so I'm really excited to just be getting into some more products and more options for you guys out there. So let's get over the table and I'll show you what we got. Okay, so this is our new universal trailing arm kit that can be used in a lot of different applications that we're going to be putting on the Ram 3500 today. Now before I get into the kit, I wanted to talk about why you needed trailing arms on a big truck like this. Now they're especially useful when you do have a lifted truck, especially with lift blocks in the rear end. When you put a lift block under your leaf spring, you get a lot more torque on your axle, and you can have axle wrap, which can cause wheel hop, which can cause driveline vibrations, which can cause a lot of problems in the rear end. Now trailing arms really keep your axle from doing all that. It keeps it all centered and straight under the truck. Now this kit is an aggressive kit. It's a very heavy duty application. This is one of those kits that's designed to kind of set it and forget it and never have to worry about it again. We build this kit out of 1/4 inch plate. It's a Weld-On kit. The arms are made of 2-inch 70-75 aluminum. So what that means is that they have a memory in them, so they can take a hit on a rock if you're on the trail, if you're hitting anything, and bounce back and retain their actual form, unlike a steel trailing arm, which if you do hit it, you will bend it and you'll have to replace it. So on this setup, these trailing arms start at about 60 inches eye to eye. We're doing a 2 5/8 mounting width, which fits the Ram application pretty well. There are different spacers for different frame widths, and I'll get into that when we do the install. So like I said, this can be adapted to multiple trucks, multiple applications, because it is a Weld-On kit and because everything's individually plated. This truck, the frame is 2 5/8 inches wide, so we're doing a 2 5/8 mount width, which we accomplish with the misalignment spacers. Now for the ends of the trailing arms, we are using FK massive rod ends. These are fantastic for this application. It's a set it and forget it kind of thing. No lubrication or maintenance required. They also make them in the USA, which we love because we're made in America here. I'm excited to get these on and show you how they work with the trailing arms. Now for the color, the customer picked out Illusion Cherry. Matches the truck a little bit. All the other products we're going to do on this truck are going to be this color, so I'm excited to see how it all comes together in the end. But for now, let's get the truck in the air and start mocking things up. Okay, so now that we're under here, we're going to start on the axle side. Now, it is important that we line up our axle mounts with our frame here. And that's because our frame mounts actually sandwich the frame. There's not going to be any misalignment left to right. Now if you're off a little bit, it's still going to function the same. It's still going to do what it needs to do. But we're going to just either pull a straight edge, or if you have a laser, whatever you need. We'll give you a measurement here once we get that figured out. But we're going to line up our axle brackets with the frame, and we're going to go right to the bottom here. Now the reason we're going to the bottom is because, like I said, with these huge lift blocks, when you're under acceleration or you're towing or just have a lot more force on your axle, everything can kind of wrap backwards, and the trailing arm is going to prevent that. Let's get those axle brackets. We're going to mock them up with the joint in them, bolted at the correct width. We'll get them on here, see where we're going to be, and then we'll start our prep so we can get into welding them to the axle. For lining up our axle brackets, I've actually had this plumb bob sitting around the shop for quite a while. So we're going to use that. Just in case our lift is off, we'll measure both sides and make sure they're equal before we do any prep or welding. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to put the string along the side of the frame and let it just fall where it should. And that's going to be right where our axle bracket needs to go. There's a bump stop kind of right here, but this is, and we're going to put a mark right there. We'll check the other side too. Let's see if I can reach up there. And this is assuming our truck was lifted straight. and is level, which it looks pretty good. But like I said, if you're a little off, the arms are long enough that your geometry is going to be fine. Now we'll go to the driver's side from the backing plate there to my first mark. It's about 8 5/8. So now we'll go to the driver's side and see if that holds true. Okay, now on this side again, it has the bump stop. It's adding about 3/16 of an inch to the width of the frame. So I'm just gonna go, I'll do the same. I'll go right on the line because our brackets we're putting on here are 1/4 inch, so we can just use this as the outside reference. And we'll hold it on the other side. All right, as long as we're centered on these marks, we're good, even though we're on the outside of the bump stop. Okay, so it is shifted a little. This side is 8 1/2, that side's 8 3/4, so we're gonna just split the difference and do 8 5/8 on our measurement. And I'll put the bracket up now. Like I said, we're gonna put it straight on the bottom, and we want it hanging as straight down as we can. And the frame sits right between your U-bolt and your shock mount, which is really nice for this. We're just gonna mark this out for our prep, and we're just gonna grab the grinder, clean that up so we can get this welded on. Okay, so before we really get into the welding, I wanted to go over a few things about welding on your vehicle. Now, it is a good idea to disconnect your battery before you do any welding on it, just so you don't short something out, ground out other components, because you are putting electrical current through your frame, through your body, through your axle. Now, when welding on axles specifically, we're gonna do a stitch weld, and we're gonna alternate between driver's side and passenger side to keep our axle cool. Now, if you were to weld this whole thing all in one go, you risk warping your axle, and not only that, you can also get it hot enough to melt your axle seals, and you don't wanna do that. And the last thing I would point out, when you're welding any sort of bracketry like this, I'm gonna start with my inside welds first. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna really clamp down on the joint here. And we don't necessarily want that, but when I finish with my outside welds, it's gonna pull that pressure back away from the joint and give us a better fit on the joint. So when we have a little paint on it, it'll install more easily. Now, if you do it the opposite way, where you start with your outside welds and finish with your inside welds, you're gonna have that really strong clamp on your joint. It's gonna be really tough to get this out, and it's gonna be really hard to put it back in. You might lose all your paint after you clean this up and paint it. So we're gonna start with inside welds, we're gonna stitch weld, and we're gonna alternate back and forth. Since I'm welding on the axle or starting on the axle, I'm gonna ground to the axle, or our ground cable's barely gonna reach. But I'm just gonna clean off a spot on the bottom of the shock mount here. We can touch it up later with the rattle can, just to be able to ground out. Dude, this welder sounds like a jet engine too. I grabbed this hood from the other shop, and it's almost sacrilege to not have a core sticker on it before I start welding, so we're gonna pause real quick and fix this issue. I don't know whose hood this is, but I'll talk to them. For all you welders that are sticker guys, I am a sticker guy on my hood. We are good to go now. 8 5/8. Give it a tack. Pretty good. Okay, we'll start our stitch weld on this one, then we'll go set up the driver's side. Another thing you can use is a wet rag to keep everything cool as you go back and forth. I'm also changing the position of the weld on which tab I'm welding as I move back and forth. But the idea is to not get everything too hot. So you can't be too safe. Don't want to be replacing your differential or your axle seals. All right, I should have known better, but while we're welding, we got a bunch of slag on our joints. I don't love that, so we will be including these weld spacers in the kit. So we're gonna swap those out to finish our welding so we don't ruin our joints, and we'll have to clean the slag up off of them. Yeah, let's just get a little excited. So let's swap them out. You wanna come closer? Come close. We're having fun with these brackets. So this is exactly what I was talking about with the welding the inside first. There was a lot of pressure pulling these plates together. I didn't want to weld the outside and get even more slag on our joints, so we are going to have to pry these apart a bit. Or I can put a bead right here and right here and it'll naturally open that up. I don't love that idea because this side's not as welded, and if I put a bead here, it's going to pull just this tab over. So we're going to try to pry this apart evenly and get our spacers in. Same with on that side. And Marissa, you want to show that? Don't rush when you're doing this. You make mistakes like this. We're going to cut this bolt off. We'll put it in from the other side. We'll get the spacer in. We'll get back to welding. All right, before I pull this side out, I am going to lay a bead on this outside on both of these to try to prevent that collapsing. So we got driver and passenger side welded up on the axle. We stitch welded it. I did about 1.5 inch bead at a time, moving back and forth, using the rag to cool it off. It's a pretty heavy duty axle on the rear end of this truck, so I'm not super worried about, you know, going a little bit more than that. If you need to, just try to keep it cool, lay a good bead, and you'll be fine. Again, don't weld with your joints and spacers. That didn't work. We got slag all over them. We'll have to clean them up. Again, we're gonna include welding spacers in the kit, so you don't have to go through swapping them out like we did. Okay, this is what I'm talking about when you're welding the outside last. This will fall right out, and that's a perfect fit for what we're doing. And those are hot. But they look really good. We're gonna clean up the welds. We're gonna get some rusty metal primer on them, and then we'll rattle can them black to make sure they don't rust. All right, we're using Duplicolor Rust Barrier. This is designed to be sprayed directly onto rusty frames, suspension, that sort of thing. Any of your automotive parts will carry something like this. I would recommend using it on this setup. So you can do a rusty metal primer, or Pour 15 is also a really good option for underbody. But for now, we're gonna use the Duplicolor. We can move on to the frame side. Now, to set this up properly, our trailing arms have a minimum adjustment of about 60¼ inches bolt to bolt, and we don't want to be at minimum. Those will adjust out to about 62 inches safely. So we probably want to set our frame side hole right in the middle, like around 61, and try to get lined up on the frame. Now, you can use the arm itself as well. You could bolt it into both ends and just put it up and see where it sits. We just want to make them equal on both sides just to be consistent. But really all this arm is doing is holding our axle in place for more stability on the road, less axle wrap, eliminate wheel hop, all those things. So length doesn't matter, it just needs to bolt in and actually hold it in place. But like I said, we're gonna shoot for about 61 inches on these. I'll have Marissa hold the tape measure and we'll get a good idea of where we're gonna put it here, and we'll mark it. So the last thing we need to double check, because you can go up and down as far as you want on this. We're about 1 inch from the top of the frame on this frame rail. We just want to make sure we have enough clearance for our joint in the hole. So we're going to grab one of those. Now these joints are 3 inches in diameter, which means you need at least 1.5 inches between the bottom of your frame rail and the center of your bolt. We're really close, so we're going to actually move this down a little bit. Ideally, just for peace of mind, I'd like to have about 1/4 inch. We have plenty of room between the frame, and we don't want to lose a ton of ground clearance, so we like to keep this tight, but it looks like, yeah, about 1.5 inches from the top of the frame rail. So I'm just going to score with this etching tool. We have it scored, we'll pull it down. We're going to prep both sides so we can weld. And then we'll put it back up here, check our measurements again, and then we'll just weld this all up. There's 2 holes on the top up here for if you really wanted to just bolt it through your frame, you can do that. It would work with these 3/4 inch bolts. We're going to use these holes for plug welds, and we're just going to do some beads on the outside. I am not going to weld the inside of the frame because that will really pull these tabs in and make it difficult to mount, and welding all around the outside is plenty of strength for what we're doing here. Let's get it prepped, let's get it welded up, and then we'll move on to the driver's side, which, like I said, we're going to have to mess with the fuel tank, but we'll deal with that when we get there. So here we go. Okay, I left a bit of our chisel mark, you can see it there, so we're going to line up with that. Even though the clamping force is holding this all in place, we are going to clamp this down so it's nice and flush to the frame, and then we can do our welds. We'll plug weld here, get this all welded up, we'll clean it, paint it, and we'll be done for this side. The passenger side is finished. We're moving on to the driver's side, and this fuel tank is right where we want to put our bracket here. So we're going to just get the transmission jack in here, start loosening the straps. There's 2 straps, and hopefully we can just drop this front end enough that we don't have to take it completely out. We'll get it strapped in. Unfortunately, the customer did drop it off with almost a full tank, which is super fun on these big trucks, but we're gonna make it work. We're gonna get it done. I'm gonna start pulling down the front end and see if I can't get it down in a way enough to do what we need to. We'll see how this goes. The back strap is loose. All the connections are at the back of the tank from what I can see under here. Go nice and slow. So I came down. We are kind of contacting the body back here, and I don't want to adjust that rear strap much more, so I'm actually going to move this transmission jack back to center, or at least what I think center of gravity is, and we'll just bring the whole thing down. I don't think we're going to get away with just the front, because the area we need to prep is still right here, and I just don't have enough room to do what I want. So now we do have the fuel lines, so we'll pop those up and bring them away. And then, yeah, let's get to mocking up our bracket. We'll start with the outside because that's easy, and then we'll just match the back and get it done. But from the looks of it, it looks like you can just lower your gas tank like this. It's kind of perched on the body and frame back there, so it's wedged in there pretty good. I got the chain on the transmission jack. We are a little front heavy, but we do want the front end down out of our way, so I'm feeling good about this. Let's do our mock-up, start our prep on the outside, get that all done, and then we can get this in here. All right, so for simplicity of doing this side, I went ahead and took a measurement of the passenger side, and our closest corner of the bracket was roughly 7.5 inches from this body mount cross member support that's on our frame. So for the purposes of mock-up and prep, we're just gonna hold our bracket out and get close on prep, and then when we get ready to weld it, we'll actually pull our measurements. But for now, I'll get the bracket up here at about 7.5 inches from this rear body mount. Match the other side. We're roughly about there. That's going to get us really close. About 1.5 inches on the top. our prep looks good on this side, and our prep looks pretty good on the back side too. So this is pretty close. We're going to pull the tape measure and make sure we have that 61 inches that we've been looking for, which is in the middle of our adjustment range on those arms, which is exactly what we want. I always talk about measuring and the proper way to measure hole to hole. You have to account, if you're alone like me, right now I'm just had to step out for a second. So we're going to account for the width of the head of the bolt if you're pulling on that to center on your axle side. So the width of this head is 1.125". So half of that, which would put us at center of the bolt head, is 9/16. So we're going to subtract that from our total measurement overall to make sure we're right on. So as I pull this, I'm right at 61 and 9/16 from the outside of this bolt to center on our bracket, which is perfect. So this is right where we want it to be. Matching the other side worked pretty well. So we're going to get a clamp on here, and I'm going to get this thing welded up. All right, this side is a little more tricky. A couple things we got to watch for is I don't want to melt my screwdriver, and our car hoist lift is right there with the plastic pad. Also, we got the fuel tank on the back end. It is plastic. It's pretty far away, so we should be good. I'm going to get to welding. All right, that's it for the outside. Screwdriver did get a little warm, and our little vibration dampener might have got toasty. Still okay around the hoist pad. Now it's the back side that's going to be a lot more difficult for sure. With that gas tank in the way, and it was a lot more rusty back there. So let's get back there and see how it is. So for the back side here, where it's really tight, and we have the fuel lines up here, and we actually have some diesel leaking out of the breather area right here. So as much welding as I feel comfortable doing back here, and honestly that's more than enough. Trailing arms a lot of the times are a single shear setup. This is a double shear. I got a really good bead here, a bead here, and a bead there, and that's honestly plenty. So we'll clean this up, get it painted, get the gas tank back up because it's dripping, and finally get the arms on. So let's do that. Ooh, she hot. We have most of our adjustment out, which is I like to have as much thread engagement as possible, which is great. That 61 inches for how we set it up worked really well. So these are beautiful. They're going to make this tow a lot better and just handle a lot better, especially on the acceleration. And this is a manual. I don't know if I mentioned that. That's part of the issue with the lower gears and the clutch. You're just putting so much force back on these blocks. You get so much axle wrap. So now that's going to be gone. I'm excited to get this button up, and this kit turned out great. Super happy. So we're going to let that other side dry. As soon as it is, we'll get the fuel tank back in. We'll get the driver's side on. Definitely a bit more work to do the driver's side. Wasn't that hard. I was thinking it might have been worse than it was. The transmission jack was key for getting that down out of the way enough in order to get this kit mounted on. Now I will mention this is an 08 3500 mega cab. With that fuel tank so close, I don't know if you could have utilized the bolt-on option. It might have been high enough. I could check when I get back there, but welding it on is perfect. You're already welding the axle side. So no, this kit, it turned out really good, so I'm super happy with it. So yeah, we'll let that side dry and we'll get the other side done. so that wraps it up for our install of our trailing arm kit on this Ram 3500. It turned out fantastic. Again, it's made out of 70-75 aluminum, so if you do hit something, it's going to bounce right back. I'm excited to give this truck back to the customer because his main concern was when he was towing and having axle wrap and wheel hop and having all those issues. They should be gone now, but before we can give back to him, we have a lot of other mods we're going to be doing for this truck. It is going to be a little bit of a series. We're going to do at least 3 videos. Next week, stay tuned. We're going to be installing the front adjustable track bar as well as highlighting our new sway bar end links for the Ram platform. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If there's something you want to see for the Ram, let us know down below, and we'll catch you in the next one.